Okay, on motor development, we talked a little bit about gross motor skills and fine motor skills. Gross motor skills involve large muscles, so large muscle activity. So walking, climbing, kicking a ball, those are going to be gross motor skills. It takes a lot of coordination to do these things, so that's why it takes kids a while to learn how to walk. The idea, if you actually think about it, when you're walking, you're actually you're just standing on one foot for a moment there when you do that. And so it takes a lot of coordination, it takes core strength, and those are things that kids have to develop. For fine motor skills, this involves more finely tuned movements like using a pencil, fork, things of that nature, grasping a toy, a spoon, buttoning a shirt is definitely a good example. They require finger dexterity, is one way of putting that. Figure 3.10 talks about some milestones in gross motor development, so you could look through that if you would like. Walking alone easily, about 11 months to 14 months is the range for that. Anyways, yeah, you might look through that figure. On sensation and perception. So, sensation is a stimuli from the environment that comes into you. So it's a smell, a sight, a sound, a taste, or a touch. Those interact with your sensory receptors. So these are going to be your eyes, your ears, your tongue, nostril, your skin. And then you have what's called the perception of it, an interpretation of what you just sensed, your perception of events. So the sensory information, the sensation comes in, and then there's your perception of it. They have studied infants' perception, and they have what they call a visual preference method. When they studied this, they found that infants can distinguish between different stimuli, and they measured the time that they attended to the different stimuli. And what this showed, this figure 3.12, is that kids really like faces right from the get-go. So they had like a white circle, yellow circle, red circle, a bullseye, some random stuff, and then a picture of a face, and they showed it to the babies to see how long they would look at it. And they looked at the face way longer than the other like geometric shapes. So yes, right from the get-go, they do have a preference for faces. A couple other things, visual acuity and color. So when they're first born, they can't see that well. It's like 20/600 is their vision, and then it gets to 20/40 by the time they're 6 months old. So this is a pretty good example or explanation. When they're first born, this is what their parents look like to them, and then by 6 months, it's closer to this. So not only is it become more refined, they get more. There's more color vision that improves as well. Related to this is the infant's depth perception. They measure this using, or look at it, research it using the visual cliff experiments. What they do is, so they got the baby back here on this part, and then they have this part, and there's a big drop off there, but they put glass over it, but the baby can't tell necessarily that there's glass there. So what they're saying there is that the baby, when they get to this edge here, they don't want to cross over it, and that's because probably what the researchers say is if they have depth perception, they're able to tell that they may fall off the edge if they're able to go over, which is probably accurate. Some researchers say that they're just actually picking up on the parents' fears and doing like what's called social referencing. I think that they probably do have that ability for the depth perception, at least at that age. Okay, some other things related to the senses and perceptions. For hearing, they do know the caregiver's voice. The last 2 months in the womb, they can hear it, and they will turn their head towards the caregiver just within a few days after being born. They don't hear low pitch as well as high pitch. So we use what's called child-directed speech, where basically you speak in a higher tone than you normally would whenever you're talking to an infant. And it's because a lot of people like instinctually know that babies don't hear as well in the lower registers, and so they talk up higher. For touch, they will turn their head towards touch whenever they feel it right off the bat, so they have touch as soon as they're born. Smell, pretty much as soon as they're born, they have that as well. They can differentiate between different odors. They have preferences. So like strawberry and vanilla, they like that smell. Rotten eggs and fish, they don't like that smell. And taste, they can also have this pretty much as soon as they're newborns, even in the in utero. So they put saccharin, which is like an artificial sweetener, in the amniotic fluid near the fetus, and the baby would start swallowing more because they like the taste of it. They did this in the 1940s. I don't think that this experiment would fly today. So basically, they fed these fetuses an artificial sugar. I kind of do wonder how those kids turned out, if there was any types of effects for doing that. Anyways, that is it for sensation and perception. On the next few slides, we will start up with Piaget.